Welcome back everyone to Reddish Bear Games, where we repair, mod, and refurbish retro video game systems. Today we're working on a customer order where we need to install a BennVenn screen in a GameGear. We've done that before, but this is a different model and a different procedure. So let's get started. So this unit came to me already recapped, so we don't have to do any of that, and mostly functional. It needed a repair to the power board, but that was a simple matter. Currently it works just fine, and the only remaining problem after fixing the power board is that the customer would like to replace the original screen with an IPS one. The difficulty there is that this is a VA5 unit. VA4, VA5, and Majesco GameGears were Sega's redesigns to cut costs. I don't offhand know the technical specs, but I know they reduced the number of colors that it was technically capable of. I assume games just didn't use the capability or something. But at any rate, it needs a different screen than the standard GameGear does. And therefore, this install does not have a nice flex ribbon cable to use, or even as many options available as the earlier model units do. So we're going to use a BennVenn because that's the only option that I'm aware of for a VA5. And largely this is going to involve running wires and soldering them directly to connection points. So let's get started. Okay, so once we have the screen in place, our main challenge is finding all of the connection points. So we have to run actual wire in this case. I'm going to start from the top and move down, but we're going to have to pretty much entirely work within the microscope. So the SMS pin, pad, whatever, is going to be our first goal. So on VA5, the SMS connection point is where am I? Is here. So that's going to be relatively short and easy. While we're over here, looks like we pull clock from here, and then the rest of the things we're going to be interested in this area are on this chip. Then what I'm going to do first is just go ahead and tin these points so I don't have to come back and do it later. let's go ahead and tin this test point. Okay. We're going to run it up to here and try to cut it to length. We don't want to make the run tight, but we don't want to have a lot of excess wire either. This is going to be a huge mess. Clock would be there as previously mentioned. So let's put a little extra tin here. We might want to remove that cap. I'm going to run it up here, just like that one. So the ground point pictured in the instructions appears to be from, I think, a VA4, which is not the same as this. And the one in their picture doesn't exist on this board, but I don't see why we can't use this conveniently accessible point as ground. It seems to have a 0 ohm resistance to other obvious ground points. Well, I'm going to go with the easy one for now. It's not hard to change this if I discover I'm wrong later. Okay. Res. Res is found on this chip. In case you're wondering, there's no rhyme or reason to the colors I'm selecting for these wires, other than I specifically did use black for ground. It's a very small point. The heck is this mess? We're going to use some flux to help us with knot bridging. We're going to add a tiny amount of solder here. And then we're going to do our best to attach We've got one other pin on this side to connect, and that's D0, which is next anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and do that while I'm down here and while there's still flux here. Okay, and let's check to make sure that we haven't bridged those pins. It looks all right, but testing is always better. Okay, good. You just want to curve this gently to avoid stressing our connection. All right, we'll connect. We used green for res. I don't know if that means reset or resolution, but it doesn't really matter. Now we're going to do something very similar. We need more lines off of this chip here. We need D2 and D3 come from this side. Looks like D2 is on pin 2 and D3 is on pin 4. And to be clear, when I'm using these numbers, I'm simply counting left to right. That doesn't mean the literal second pin as you would normally count them on an IC. I'm being informal here. So when I say pin 2, I mean this one, regardless of if that's really number 2 or not. Okay, this one will be D3. And D2. It's a little awkward because of the cartridge slot. I think that's what we want. Don't love when it does that. Looks ugly as heck. D1 and CL2 are on the top of this same chip. We want pin, looks like pin 1 and pin 4 in this case. We're going to go with D1 first because it's easier, because I'll block myself if I do the other one first. Oh, we got a bridge. We don't want that. No bridge. Okay. And then we need pin 4. Pin 4 is this guy. Okay, we're supposed to get 5 volts from the right side of this. That's pretty easy. We'll just try and be quick so we don't accidentally remove the tiny little piece with our heat. And we're going to try and go under these existing wires. Probably would have done this first if I'd realized, but no big deal. All right. Okay. That's pretty good. And then we're just going to go straight over to here. So snip. right. And now we have just these pads left. Let's finish with this chip. We need to get 4-star off of the first pin from the bottom. This one. And I should have put the flux on it first, and I didn't because I'm an idiot. It's okay though, we didn't bridge anything, and the flux will still help us connect to the actual wire, which is what matters. Oh, that looks terrible. Ow. That hurt. Might have left too much metal on this. Yeah, I gotta trim that. Star 2 and star 3 come from, well, let's say star 2 comes from this capacitor on the left. Suppose I might as well stick with black for these controller buttons. I'm going to connect 3 first so that I have fewer wires to worry about burning. 3 connects to the left side of this capacitor. That's going to go there. We've got one more required connection to make, and that's, let's see, up here in the corner, the bottom of this capacitor. This is the start button. And the kit uses that for changing screen modes. So at this point, we're nearly done. What we have left, I've connected the 1 star to this capacitor over here, which is only part of what we have to do on a VA5 in order to get brightness to work. We have 2 other changes we have to make. We have to connect the brightness connection point here to here, and possibly remove this resistor. I think we need to remove it, even though the instructions don't specifically say. The instructions don't actually say to remove this, but the picture has it removed. So we're going to try removing it, and then we connect the brightness wire to the right pad here. And then they tell us to cut the trace for this pin on both sides of the board. I really don't want to do that. I'm going to see if I can get the pin out first, because I'd rather not modify the motherboard if I don't actually have to. I guess that might seem a silly stance at this point when we've already irreversibly removed the old screen and such. But so if you want to cut the traces for this, they'd be under here, and it's not hard to do. And I don't think there's anything wrong with doing that. I just personally don't like that solution. So I'm going to try something different. And then we need to lift up this ribbon very carefully, because we have to add a resistor underneath here to connect the this pin on the board to it. So let's get started with these final steps. Carefully, we're going to lift up this gate. We don't want to damage either the gate itself or the ribbon. Okay, it's lifted. We're going to carefully lift this ribbon out. And that reveals the resistor we have to connect to. We need a 10 kilo ohm resistor. And the ones I have on hand are extra tiny, so that's going to be fun. We're going to have to try to do our best not to lose those. I'm going to start by adding a tiny bit of flux to the bottom of this R7. Solder. Okay. Let's see if we can get one of these guys out without losing it. That's the first challenge. There's micro soldering and there's micro soldering. I need to get better, more reasonable size for these. But it's on. And let's just test the connectivity, because I can't actually see whether that's connected or not at that size. And I'm showing 20 kiloohms, so that's probably correct. And it shows that they are indeed connected as desired. So let's get to this this pin. I'm going to see if I can desolder just pin 2, or rather the second from the bottom. Okay. And then I'm going to try to remove the pin itself from this side. I'm going to gently bend this capacitor up because I need to get at this point. I would love to just remove this pin. Okay, that's the pin. No connection between the dial and the board on this pin. So all I need to do is run a wire from there over to the resistor I just added. That should be easy enough. So what we actually want here is to connect it. I've been saying connect it to the board. That's wrong. They want you to cut the trace because they want you to connect the wire here and use the dial, bypassing the board. So what I'm actually going to do is try to attach it to where the pin was. See if I can do that without impeding the movement of the pin, of the dial. I think we can do it, but okay. Still turning freely. The board moved on me. That's annoying. Still turns freely. I'd rather that wire be covered, so let's try one more time to get a nice joint there. See, that's what we don't want, is to melt the wheel. Okay, that looks a little better to me. And we're still turning freely. Okay, and on this end, we are going to run the wire over to here. And very, very carefully going to have to connect it to the other end of this resistor. So let's tin that quickly. It's not going to be easy to do, is it? There's not really much of a point to connect to, but we're going to do our best. And all right. Now we want to carefully lay this back down and into here. Try and make sure you've got it straight in as much as you can. Just give it a little push, try and be sure it's all the way in, and then I'm going to carefully close the gate to lock it down. This is a big, long gate, and these flaps can be fragile, so try and give it force from 2 or 3 points at the same time instead of pulling all from one or even from the middle. Okay, that's probably good. And now we just need to connect our brightness wire to this point over here, as I mentioned earlier. But we're first going to remove the top one. I'll try to do it without burning this new wire we just ran. Probably should have done this first. Carefully move it out of the way. There we go. I'm going to set that aside just in case I need it, but I don't think that I will. I don't like when that gets all spiky, so let's give it just a touch of flux. See if we can... Yeah, that's much nicer. Okay. And that's all 3 brightness wires. we're going to clean this up a little bit and then do a minimal reassembly to test. Let's take a look at all our connections. They look pretty nice. I don't really see anything to complain about. It still moves freely. Let's bend this guy back down gently. Okay. Gonna put the power board back in. We replaced the capacitors on here earlier. I've also since removed and replaced the battery connector and treated it with white vinegar because it had some leaked battery corrosion. Now, as we may recall from a prior video, likely I'm going to have to remove this shield and cut these tabs off to accommodate the screen. But for the purposes of testing, I'm not going to do that yet. All I really need to do is hook up the speaker, the sound in the audio board, the power in the audio board, and get a game installed so I can make sure that it actually runs. That's the first test. All right. We're going to use everyone's favorite game, Joe Montana Football, for this, because that's the one that's sitting here on my bench. Obviously, if it can't run Joe Montana Football, what's even the point? All right. So the colors are obviously screwy. Brightness appears to work. If we reboot, the colors come up correct. Now, I consulted with BennVenn on this because I was afraid that I had done something wrong when I saw that happen. However, he tells me that it's some behavior of the Majesco ASIC where it just outputs inverted colors sometimes and they don't know why, and there's nothing for them to go off of to determine that it's happening, so they can't fix it in firmware by re-inverting them. The solution is apparently just to power cycle it. For me, when testing, it's only ever happened on a cold boot, like the first time I started it after a while. I don't know, but again, according to BennVenn, it's sort of expected behavior with the VA5, VA4, and whatever the later Majesco ones are called. So it's not an indicator of something you've done wrong with the install, as I was concerned with initially. In this case, I've already informed the customer of that. But everything looks in order. The screen's working really well. The brightness is working, the volume is working, the sound is working. We'll test some of the screen controls in a little while, once we have the buttons attached. Although, you know what, while we're in here, let's at least test that start works to change the display mode. You can just press it. You can short this with anything, but I have the pad right here. All right, see, when we hit start and hold it, we can change the mode of the screen. So that's working too. On to reassembly. Now this time I'm going to keep my finger on the boss as I cut it so that it doesn't go flying away. And funny as that was in the first video about adding a screen to these, if that flew away into your eye, it could probably hurt quite a bit, at best. We're going to want to clean the buttons while we're in here, because you don't get another good chance. And we want to clean the inside of the screen shield before we put this back together, because you can't get at that from the outside. So I'm just using isopropyl here, nothing special, and a cotton makeup pad. Most of what you see here is wear and not actual dirt, so we can't really do anything to fix it. Not that it needs fixing. You can't really see that part anyway. This particular unit is fairly clean. Sometimes you get into these and they're disasters on the inside. Like, these button pads look excellent. I don't know if they're new or just little used, but they are in great shape. All right. Now let's put these back. Well, no, first let's clean the screen, I guess, because like I said, we won't be able to get back in here. There's some sort of like a misty film looking residue on it from something. I don't know what from, but let's get rid of it. If possible, we always want to leave these things cleaner than we started. And at this point, we probably want to test for straightness. Is the screen well aligned? Because we still have a chance to adjust it at this point. All right, and here we can see the screen looks pretty well aligned to me. If it weren't, at this point you could loosen the screws on the retaining the screen here and try and nudge it into position, but I think we're pretty good, so I'm going to continue with the reassembly. That should do it. Now let's just make sure the buttons all work and everything seems good. Fortunately, I found my Sonic game, so we don't have to use the illustrious Joe Montana football. Brightness up. So this kind of moire pattern or whatever that you see through the camera is not visible locally. Volume works, start worked. Directions work, feel fine. Up, down, left, right, one. Does two do anything? Well, it responds. It's apparently the same button. Looks good. Everything seems to function. I'd call that a successful mod. So there you have it, how to install a BennVenn IPS screen on a VA5 GameGear. There wasn't a lot of instruction out there that I could find for how to do it on a VA5 specifically, and it requires a different kit from BennVenn and lots of manual running of wires. So hopefully someone out there finds this useful. If anyone needs mods or repairs to a retro console, get in touch with us at reddishbeargames.com. And we'll see you next time with something else. Take care.